You've been told to save $1 million, but you're missing the real game changer. $10,000 does something most people never expect. Picture this scene. It's 3 in the morning, and you're staring at the darkness above, your mind consumed by a parade of what-if scenarios. What if your vehicle won't start tomorrow? What if your device suddenly breaks? What if you suddenly find yourself unemployed? What if your beloved animal requires emergency surgery? Does this resonate with you? Here's a revelation that might shift everything. There's a specific amount of money that could eliminate nearly all of these 3 a.m. panic sessions and fundamentally reshape your entire existence. Many believe that monetary thresholds are arbitrary targets created by the wealthy to intimidate ordinary people. But consider this different perspective. There's genuine science and logic supporting why certain money milestones trigger dramatic life transformations. And the first game-changing amount isn't a 7-figure sum or even 6 figures. It's simply $10,000. Someone who's dedicated an unusual amount of mental energy to understanding finances, behavioral psychology, and why certain individuals navigate monetary obstacles smoothly, while others are perpetually consumed by anxiety about their checking account. If you've ever been curious about how having different financial cushions actually feels, and particularly how each level alters your decision-making patterns, please hit subscribe and leave a thumbs up if this perspective helps you. Before we investigate what makes $10,000 such a pivotal number, imagine what daily life resembles without it. You recognize that uncomfortable moment in the supermarket when you're doing rapid mental arithmetic about whether you can afford the better cereal or if you're stuck with the budget option that has questionable flavor. Or when colleagues suggest dinner plans and you fabricate an excuse because revealing that $25 would devastate your weekly budget for food feels impossibly embarrassing. This is existence for millions operating on nothing but their next paycheck. Every purchase decision demands careful deliberation. Every unexpected bill feels like an approaching catastrophe. You're continuously in damage control mode with your finances instead of proactively directing your future. But this is where things become interesting. There's a fascinating psychological transformation that emerges at exactly the $10,000 savings point. This has zero connection to acquiring fancy possessions. Truthfully, most people reaching this milestone don't substantially alter their consumption patterns whatsoever. The actual shift is far subtler and significantly more transformative. What changes first is your relationship with uncertainty and risk. Without savings, every choice feels precarious. Accepting a different job, moving to a new location, booking a trip, all become enormous sources of stress because you understand that one misstep creates financial devastation. However, the moment you possess $10,000, these identical scenarios suddenly become manageable. You won't resign tomorrow to pursue your pipe dreams, but you might finally feel secure enough to request that raise you've been considering. You might feel motivated to invest in yourself through educational programs that could expand your earning capacity. The safety buffer doesn't create recklessness. Rather, it permits you to consider possibilities beyond just surviving until the following paycheck. Something remarkable occurs in your brain when you witness a 5-figure balance appear on your screen for the first time. Researchers have determined that achieving monetary stability actually lowers cortisol, your body's main stress compound. This means crossing the $10,000 threshold doesn't simply reorganize your finances. It literally rewires your nervous system's stress response. Remember the most recent instance your automobile displayed a warning indicator? When living paycheck to paycheck, that light signals impending financial collapse. You immediately spiral about repair costs, whether you'll require credit, whether family can loan you money. Yet when $10,000 exists in your account, that identical indicator becomes merely a nuisance. You're irritated, absolutely, but you're not experiencing panic. This transition from panic to mild frustration seems inconsequential, yet it cascades throughout everything. When financial fear isn't constant, you make superior decisions everywhere. You rest more deeply. You accomplish more in your career. You connect better with those close to you. Monetary anxiety permeates virtually every human behavior. And removing that anxiety releases mental resources you can invest back into improving your situation. Here's what most people overlook regarding $10,000. The actual advantage comes less from spending it and more from knowing it's present. Financial specialists refer to this as the security fund principle. Among personal finance concepts, this remains vastly underappreciated. A security fund isn't genuinely about dealing with emergencies. It's about the tranquility derived from recognizing you can handle emergencies. Ironically, most individuals who build $10,000 never truly spend it on genuine emergencies. They redirect it toward potential opportunities. They pursue education. They launch projects. They relocate to better communities. Or they simply gain the psychological freedom to concentrate on earnings expansion because survival mode is no longer consuming their consciousness. There's additionally a self-assurance element that's impossible to quantify, but equally impossible to overlook. When you're conscious that money exists within reach, your entire demeanor changes. Your negotiations become more effective. You're more inclined to turn down unfavorable propositions because you're functioning from stability, not desperation. This confidence frequently produces superior employment opportunities, superior contracts, and superior life results. Now, you might imagine that $10,000 feels impossible to accumulate, particularly when you're currently unable to preserve even $100 monthly. But here's the fascinating element about human nature. It is the genuinely challenging element isn't gathering the dollars themselves. You're on. The genuinely challenging element is becoming someone who preserves dollars. Most individuals treat saving resembles a temporary restriction. They dramatically cut their expenses for several months, aggressively accumulate funds, then experience burnout and revert to previous behaviors. Yet those who effectively reach $10,000 don't perceive saving as momentary deprivation. They perceive it as becoming a different version of themselves. This identity transformation proves vital because it influences all your subsequent monetary choices. The moment you view yourself as a person who preserves funds, you observe cost reduction possibilities you previously overlooked. You develop ingenuity regarding generating supplementary earnings. You begin planning for extended horizons instead of purely chasing immediate pleasures. The encouraging reality is that this becomes progressively simpler. Preserving your initial $1,000 requires genuine exertion. It demands substantial behavioral modifications and continuous commitment. Yet securing your following $1,000 becomes noticeably simpler because you've currently ingrained the routines and mentality. By the instant you're working toward your fifth or sixth $1,000, the procedure feels practically spontaneous. There exists an additional quantitative element that makes $10,000 uniquely influential. This quantity can manage the bulk of unexpected costs that derail individuals monetarily. Automobile breakdowns, healthcare charges, income reduction, household emergencies. Nearly all such situations fall below $10,000. This indicates that upon achieving this threshold, you're practically bulletproof against the most common monetary crises that maintain individuals in monthly financial cycles. Yet arguably the most consequential shift occurring when you gather your initial $10,000 is your perspective regarding finances themselves. As opposed to perceiving finances as something draining from your salary every cycle, you start comprehending it as an instrument expanding your choices. Pre-savings, finances, feels constrained and limited. Every unit expended vanishes permanently. Yet when $10,000 constitutes your monetary foundation, you grasp that finances can generate supplementary finances. This is when individuals commence becoming interested in purchasing stakes, secondary ventures, and earnings without labor. Not because they suddenly acquired financial mastery, but because they finally possess the psychological capability to imagine past fundamental survival. When housing costs aren't haunting your thoughts, you become capable of researching retirement structures. When eating expenses aren't dominating your consciousness, you become capable of investigating investment markets. Here's a realization that might astound you. The person preserving $10,000 is genuinely nearer to monetary sovereignty compared to somebody earning double annually. How is this achievable? Since the saver has cultivated the paramount competency in prosperity development, which isn't generating finances, it's retaining finances. You probably recognize persons generating six-figure earnings, yet perpetually struggling financially. They operate automobiles carrying premium price tags, occupy residences in premium neighborhoods, and patronize restaurants charging $20 for vegetables. Yet they possess absolutely no reserves. Simultaneously, you likely recognize someone generating $40,000 yearly, yet successfully building considerable reserves through intentional financial choices. The distinction isn't compensation, it's orientation. And collecting $10,000 functions as intensive preparation in establishing sound monetary perspective. You identify distinctions between necessities and desires. You develop expertise in locating expense reduction techniques that don't sacrifice contentment. Fundamentally, you strengthen your capacity to delay rewards, quite possibly humanity's most valuable financial capacity. Now, let's examine what $10,000 genuinely supplies you in day-to-day situations. Foremost, it manages the bulk of automobile maintenance situations, short of needing a complete engine replacement. The majority of vehicle breakdowns range from $500 to $3,000. When $10,000 is available, automobile emergencies transform from catastrophic to manageable. Health emergencies similarly become surmountable. Even with mediocre insurance coverage, most urgent facility appointments, crisis interventions, or straightforward surgical treatments fall inside this bracket. $10,000 won't manage substantial surgical procedures, but it addresses the vast majority of unanticipated medical situations that surface. Unemployment, probably the most terrifying monetary circumstance for the majority, becomes something you can genuinely survive. $10,000 supplies you roughly 3 to 6 calendar periods to obtain fresh employment, contingent on your expenditure levels. That's adequate duration to remain discerning regarding your following alternative, rather than frantically embracing the initial alternative presented. Yet this is when circumstances become fascinating. Like maintaining $10,000 doesn't merely shield you from emergencies, it generates opportunities that wouldn't otherwise materialize. Like maybe you discover a specialized education program that might boost your yearly earnings by $10,000, yet costs $2,000 initially. Lacking reserves, this becomes impossible. Possessing your financial reserve, it transforms into a sensible decision. Or possibly a peer mentions launching a venture and requires modest financial backing. Lacking reserves, you merely wish them prosperity. Possessing $10,000, you gain participation in something that could possibly transform your monetary future. I'm not proposing emptying your entire security fund into your companion's cryptocurrency project, but having alternatives represents something entirely separate from having zero alternatives. The psychological shift expands beyond simply monetary choices. When reserves exist, you encounter deeper sleep. And I indicate this in the literal sense. Information indicates that individuals maintaining security funds experience substantially superior sleep relative to individuals without reserves. It emerges that monetary pressure constitutes among the substantial contributing elements towards sleep disorders, and eliminating that tension generates rapid wellness improvement. Your connections strengthen as well. Monetary tension ranks among the principal variables creating relationship dissolution and household disagreement. When bills aren't continuously stressing you, you possess greater emotional reserves for those you cherish. You're less irritable, less stressed, and more participating in your moments with family and companions. There's furthermore something important regarding the confidence boost arriving with accumulated money. You move into professional discussions in different ways when you're conscious you're not desperately needing the role. You're considerably more prepared to discuss payment and advantage provisions because you're functioning from stability. This confidence commonly produces improved employment alternatives and better compensation, generating an upward spiral, accelerating your monetary development. Yet, let's face the pressing concern. $10,000 might feel like an enormous quantity to build, particularly if you're presently incapable of saving even $100 every cycle. The bright aspect is that you don't need to build it all immediately. Actually, attempting to build too hastily typically fails, because it's not realistic. The most productive savers I've encountered initiated with incredibly modest quantities, perhaps $50 every cycle, perhaps as little as $25. What matters is dependability, not the magnitude of preliminary contributions. Following you build the routine of storing anything every cycle, you're able to raise the contribution as your compensation increases, or as you locate techniques to decrease expenditures. Here's a dose of truth that might inspire you. The average person in the nation spends greater than $3,000 every year on morning beverages, eatery consumption, and impulsive buys. That calculation omits significant categories like automobile financing or entertainment subscriptions. If you could redirect merely 30% of that consuming toward reserves, you'd achieve your $10,000 inside 3 years. I'm not recommending you eliminate morning beverages or eatery visits, but I am illustrating that many individuals possess greater adaptability in their finances compared to that they understand. The distinction among individuals who establish reserves and people who don't typically centers on recognition and intentionality, not compensation amounts. The multiplicative advantages of carrying $10,000 stretch considerably past the quick monetary peace it delivers. It modifies your perspective regarding hazards, your technique toward openings, and your preparation for the future. Ultimately, it demonstrates to yourself that you're equipped to hit cash objectives, which generates impetus for substantially bigger accomplishments afterward. When you've accumulated your earliest $10,000, you commence perceiving your succeeding $10,000 in a different way, and following that. In minimal passage, you're advancing toward authentic monetary freedom, not via good fortune or getting an inheritance, but via growing the routines and perspective that make prosperity advancement unavoidable. The transformation happening when you accumulate your earliest $10,000 isn't essentially regarding the dollars themselves. It's essentially regarding changing into a person who preserves dollars. And that metamorphosis generates consequences that extend into all facets of your world in approaches you likely have never envisioned. Let's examine a sensation termed mental exhaustion, which resembles management vocabulary, yet is genuinely a substantive emotional occurrence. Every single period, you're creating millions of minor monetary choices. Must I acquire the basic type or the superior type? Could I purchase consuming today, or must I prepare at home? Is it valuable to purchase superior energy, or is fundamental sufficient? Each one of these small selections utilizes emotional capability. And by the conclusion of the period, you're drained from perpetually computing whether you're able to handle purchases. Yet here's what emerges when you've got $10,000 obtainable. Instantaneously, a majority of these everyday cash choices become completely irrelevant. You're not selecting among basic and superior varieties because you're concerned regarding your balances. You're selecting depending on your preferences. This might seem small, yet picture the intellectual capability you'd reclaim if you discontinued making survival mathematics 50 instances each period. I'm acquainted with somebody who revealed that the initial period they shopped at a retail store, subsequent to achieving $10,000 in reserves, they almost shed emotions. Not because they spent excessively and obtained delicacies and bubbly, yet because they understood they might concentrate on what they genuinely wished to consume, as opposed to what they possibly could manage. That's a degree of autonomy most individuals don't comprehend they're missing until they feel it. Now, let's speak honestly regarding something that monetary advisors don't consistently highlight. Like, maintaining $10,000 accumulated doesn't suggest you've achieved wealth. It doesn't indicate you're prepared to abandon employment and transform into an expert surfer. You're going to be cautious before investing $1,000 in something you don't genuinely require. Yet, what it provides you is freedom from constant tension. And freedom from constant tension constitutes the starting point of all worthwhile monetary choices. When you're not desperately seeking monetary relief, you're able to genuinely consider your finances strategically, as opposed to simply reacting to whatever emerges. Possibly you understand that your insurance plan is approaching renewal, and you've got opportunity to investigate alternate companies for superior coverage instead of simply accepting what they delivered. Possibly you understand that your subscription is excessively expensive and you're able to change to something more reasonable without worrying about switching expenses. These modifications might just save you $50 or $100 every cycle. But when you're not anxious regarding finances, you're more probable to recognize these occasions. And those modest modifications gather gradually into serious reserves that make your following monetary objective substantially more reachable. Here's something fascinating regarding human conduct that numerous individuals don't comprehend. When you've got zero reserves, every unit feels important because misplacing it positions you further toward monetary collapse. Yet, when you've got $10,000 accumulated, separate units commence feeling less important, which genuinely positions you more prepared to dedicate finances to matters that might increase your compensation. This seems counterintuitive, yet it's critically essential. The individual with zero reserves perhaps skips a $50 specialist gathering, because $50 represents something when you're surviving monthly. Yet the individual with $10,000 accumulated participates in that equivalent gathering and ultimately encounters someone supplying them with an opportunity, creating $5,000 extra every cycle. The protection doesn't render you irresponsible with finances, yet it renders you more prepared to spend on possibilities. I've witnessed this materialize repeatedly. Individuals who construct their earliest meaningful reserves regularly encounter an unexpected increase in their profession progression. Not because obtaining reserves produces advancements, yet because monetary relief supplies them the bravery to pursue dangers that monetarily struggling individuals practically cannot manage. Let's examine a subject that no one mentions in monetary literature, yet everybody encounters in day-to-day situations: the relationship between individuals and finances. When you're frequently anxious regarding your monetary circumstances, it impacts how you connect with individuals in delicate yet substantial means. You might prevent gatherings because you're incapable to participate. You might sense embarrassment regarding your monetary circumstances and become withdrawn. You might perhaps create resentment toward acquaintances who look more affluent. So, there you own it. $10,000 isn't merely a figure on your banking application. It's a comprehensive emotional transformation that influences all elements of your voyage. Beginning from sleeping without nighttime stress through to entering profession discussions with genuine bravery rather than desperation, this benchmark generates a succession of events that most individuals never anticipate occurring. If you're presently examining a banking balance that appears like a communication code from prior ages, don't lose confidence. Begin modest, maintain consistency, and keep in mind that the individual you develop while gathering your earliest 10,000 is infinitely more beneficial than the finances themselves. That was your friend Clarence Capital. Don't forget, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Check out the next video. Poor people pay double. Here's why. Take care of yourself, your finances, and most importantly, your time. Good luck.